In the previous video, you saw how to rig a leg, creating bones, adding constraints and testing the rig to make sure it works as expected. In this video, you'll learn how to use the armature modifier to skin a mesh so it deforms within a skeleton. You'll see how to paint weights to define how the mesh deforms and also how to mirror weights from an object to another. During the process, you'll also learn a lot of little tips and tricks about skinning. Skinning is the process through which we say to Blender how to deform a mesh depending on a bone. Alright, so for that we have to assign, that this mesh, for example, in this case is the trousers, are affected by the bones of the legs to just be deformed accordingly. Alright, for example, if we move this leg, we want the mesh to deform with these bones. Okay, so during the skinning we are going to say to Blender which one of how the vertices will follow these bones. Okay, for doing that we have to do several things. One of them is define to Blender, say to Blender which one of the bones will deform the mesh. For example, we don't want these bones here or this one here to deform the mesh. We just want these ones here. Okay, sorry, this is okay, it is complex, but you got it, right? This one that is on yellow. So these ones that represent the leg and the foot are the ones who will definitely deform everything. The rest of them are just controllers or helpers, okay? Objects that are there just to make sure that the rig works, but that we shouldn't even touch it, all right? So what we are going to do before we start with the skinning and all that stuff is to use bone layers to distribute these bones in different layers, so we have a better sense of which bones are for what. So first we are going to select, let me check, all the bones. We are going to have three different layers. One of them with the deforming bones, another one with the bones that are there to control the rig, and another one with the helpers. Okay, so let's start with the control bones. For controlling the leg, we are going to use these two guys, these ones, and these two for controlling the leg orientation. So let's press M and move them to the second layer. This works exactly the same as the Blender usual layers instead, but what they do is that they work just inside the armature. Okay, so for example, the armature is only occupying one layer in Blender, but here we have the armature layers. You can see that there are a lot more than in the normal Blender scene. This is because a rig can be very complex, so Blender has a lot of layers for us to play with. So let's select these objects, and these ones are just there to help the rig work, and we shouldn't touch them at all. So we are going to move them to the last layer like this. Okay, usually the objects that we shouldn't touch go to a last layer like this one here or this one here, as you can see. Alright, so we have plenty of space here for things that we need, and we know that something that we shouldn't touch anymore can be found here. Alright, in other software in which you can name layers and things like that, it's usually called, this layer is usually called something like crap to hide or trash bin and things like that. Alright, so once we know that, we have this bones here, and now here we have a interesting thing, and is that this object, for example, all right, this hips bone is going to be used at the same time for controlling and for deforming. And what we can do to to make that is that Blender layers are, we can have the same object in different layers at the same time. So this object, if we press M, is right now in the second layer, but we can make it work as well in the first layer, and for doing that just press Shift and left click. So now this object exists in the first layer and in the second one. So now, as you can see, in the first layer we have the deforming bones, in the second layer we have the controller bones, and in the last layer we have the helpers. So first let's start with the helpers. We select all of them And just actually select one of them, and let's see the option that I want to show you. This is a bones option, so we need to go here to the bone tab, and inside this tab, here we have this little panel here for the forming. Alright, so if we click on the form, we disable it. So this object is not going to deform the mesh. Now we need to do that with all these bones. So let's just select those bones, go to pose, and we actually should have here the bone settings. We can click on the form, and for all of them, this will be unclicked. So just make sure that this it has worked. So as you can see, if we select any of these objects, the form option is disabled, which is exactly what we need. Now let's go here and again to the armature, and let's select the controller bones. We don't want this to be deformed. This one, yes. So let's select the ones that we don't want to deform the mesh. Let's go here to make sure it works, and press Shift W, deform. Okay, let's try with Alt W, deform, and apparently this is not working. Maybe we need an active one, okay? Because before what happened is that the active one was the hips, and I just clicked it again to disable it and to deselect it, and so we didn't have an active one. So let's press Alt W, deform, or Shift W, deform. So you can see that by clicking one and twice, we enable and disable it all the time. So you can see now they have become not to the form. Now here in the pose, the reason why I press Shift W or Alt W is that this option can be triggered by those two shortcuts. All right. The thing is that I just hadn't an active object, so the object let me just explain you what happened to make sure that you understand it. Okay, this is a situation that can happen to you, and it's usually even I know that this can happen. It just happened to me, and I was kind of surprised. Okay, let me explain it to you. I have this series of objects selected, and this one was the active bone. Okay, so the options that are displayed here are the options for this bone. But if I press Shift and right click to deselect it, I keep seeing here those options because we have no longer an active bone. Alright, I just deselected, and Blender doesn't know which one of these ones can use as an active bone. So instead, the active bone keeps being this one. But when I pressed Shift W and deform, what happened is that Blender was applying that option to the rest of the bones, but to this bone, as it's deselected, it wasn't being applied. But here we are still seeing the options for that bone. So that's what just happened. I hope you understand it, all right? Because it's a situation you can bump into. Okay, so now Blender knows which objects need to deform the mesh. Okay, which is these ones here. We can even create bone groups. Okay, and we can, for example, create the group. Just double click on it to rename it. Call it deform. There we go. And we can now select all these bones and click on assign. So these bones are now assigned to the deform set, and we can set one of these just color sets, or we can just define our own. Okay, just by dragging there. This is the deselected, selected, and active. Okay, so you can see that when we select them, they become orange, and the active one is like a lighter orange. That's what's happening here. So those objects those bones are now red, like resembling a muscle. I like that scheme, resembling a muscle, and that tells us that these bones are being used for deform the mesh, because here we can now enable this other layer, pressing Shift and left click, and this way we can know that very easily distinguish between the bones that are going to deform the mesh and the ones that are not. Okay, for example, we can select these other ones the ones that are made to control the rig, and call this controllers. All right, and just pick another set like that. Okay, and click on assign. So those ones are going to be blue, and we can very quickly change the color to something a little lighter, something like that. I really don't care, you know, I just wanted you to know that you have this option. You can just create different groups, and you know, it's also useful for when you have to deform a series of bones. So here, fortunately, we have, you know, layers set up already, but if you don't, it's very useful because you can have different sets of groups that you usually will need to select or something. So you can just go to controllers, and if you click here on select, Blender will select for you all the bones into that group. And if you have all the objects, all the bones select, if you click on deselect, the ones corresponding to this group will be subtracted from the selection. Alright, those are all pretty interesting things, but now let's go and start with the skinning. Alright, for the skinning, we are going to skin the trousers and the boots, okay? So let me just hide these other meshes. Alright, I'm going to select them with Control left click to make a lasso selection. Okay, and this way. And all these meshes, I'm going to send them to the second layer. Okay, it's you know, this shouldn't be done, but as I'm only rigging and skinning the legs, I just don't want everything else to be there. Okay, where to start with? Very easy. Just select the trousers, shift right click on one of the bones, okay? And if you are in the object mode, it doesn't matter. You just select first the mesh and then the armature. Now we press Ctrl P, and this will parent the mesh to the armature. But instead of normal parenting, you can see here that when you parent something to an armature, you have more options here. The armature deform, all right? And there are several options like adding empty groups and stuff like that. We need to select the with automatic weights. These other options are also usable, but they are different. All right, in this one, for example, Blender will create the vertex groups for each one of the bones, but you will have to set them manually. All right, automatic weights will automatically, as the name says, will automatically select the vertices that are surrounding a bone. All right, the vertices that are very close to a bone will be deformed by that bone automatically. And so with automatic weights, and we can already see how this works. So let's go to the post mode, and as you can see, it's already working. It probably just need a few tweaks, okay? But mainly you can see how this is working. Also, another thing I like to do at this stage is that while this type of bones is useful to see what we are doing when we are rigging, once we are skinning or already, you know, posing the character, this is a very intrusive way of displaying bones. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is to just go here and click on stick. And stick, you know, here you can change the type of bones that you are seeing. Okay. And wire and stick are very non-intrusive ways of seeing them. So you can still select them, you can still move them and everything, but you can see more the mesh and less the bones, okay? What I can do, if I select the trousers now, it's if we go here to the modifiers tab, you can see how an armature modifier has been added. Now this mesh has a subdivision applied, okay? And I want the armature to happen before the subdivision. Otherwise, the armature will have to calculate a lot of vertices, and you know, it will be slower. So I just click here to put the armature to happen before the subdivision is made. And let's see, there is a very subtle difference, but yeah, it is it is working, and that's the important thing. So we just need some basic tweaks here. For example, top you can see, for example, right here we need to tweak this, okay, because the leg bones are affecting way too high. All right. Now we have different options for being able to define different weights for each vertex to each bone, okay? For example, if we, all right, now one thing I want to mention is that it is better that you leave this skeleton in pose mode, because this way, when we are weighting the mesh, we will be able to access each one of the bones to select them right from here while we do the weight painting. Otherwise, you will have to select them from a list, and that is not comfortable. Let me show you what that list is. It's right here inside the mesh tab, and here in the vertex groups, you have different vertex groups for each one of the bones, okay? And these vertex groups define the weights for the vertices, all right? So for example, the toe.L, okay, would be affecting the vertices, vertices affected by the bone of the toe. Okay, now let's go and here we are in pose mode. Let's select the trousers, and let's if you select the mesh and press Ctrl Tab, you will jump into the vertex, the weight paint mode, okay? But we can also go to from here, and this is basically what we are seeing here. As you can see, with right click, if we left the skeleton in pose mode, we can select different bones, and Blender will show us how it is affecting the vertices. The ones that are completely in red color are affected 100%, while the ones in orange or yellow are in kind of 0.5, 50%, let's say, and the ones with blue are approaching 0%. The ones in black have no effect at all from this bone, right? That is why, tweaking this bone, we can just select another one and try to move it. These other vertices have no effect from this bone. Okay, so this is how we can just tweak them. For example, what we need to tweak here is that these vertices up here shouldn't be affected by this bone. All right, this bone should be affecting all the top of the trousers. Okay, so this part here is not deformed by these bones. One thing I want to do before we start is to press T, and here in the brush options, here you can see there are different brushes we can use, all right, to add or mix or even to smooth. That is the blur brush. We can blur the weights, and here we can define the weight we want to paint, the radius of the brush, right? This works exactly as the texture painting. Okay, with F we can define the size of the brush, and with Shift F, well, somehow now I'm not able to define the strength, okay, but you can do it from here. We might go here to the options. There we go. Yeah. So here inside the options, there you have the X mirror already enabled, which means that if we have this bone here, if we paint on this side and let's click, you paint with left click, you can see how the painting you're doing is mirrored on the other side. That is because Blender knows that this bone is in the center and it's mirroring its effect to the other side. If we select this bone, for example, its effect will be mirrored to this other bone, even though we cannot see its effect, okay? But if we just click to the other side, you can see how the effect is exactly the same. And here I want to, well, let's start by this, okay? So I want all this top area to be completely controlled by the hips bone. There we go. Now I probably want to just blur a little those, let's go to the tools, select blur, and just blur a little this vertices here. Something like that is okay. All right. So now let's select that bone, and with R we can see its effect. And it's not bad. But now I want, for example, this bone here shouldn't be affecting this area of this leg, okay? And the way I'm gonna do that is by clicking here, click on Subtract, and just click and drag. Something like that. Let's see what happens now. Okay, I think that is working better. And the cool thing here is that, as you can see, I just made those vertices not to be affected by this bone. But if I go to the other side, the same is happening because the weights are being mirrored. Right? If I, for example, just tweak the size and go here. Also, another cool thing you can do is to press Set, and instead of going to the wireframe mode, you will be able to see the wireframe on top of the weights, all right, which will help a lot to, you know, differentiate the vertices, so you can just click on top of the vertices that you want to affect. Now, there is another way in which you can actually change the weights of the vertices, and is by going into the edit mode. Press Set again to go to the solid mode, and you can select the vertex or several vertices. Okay, press N, and let me see where it is. Here you have it. Okay, so this vertex is it has these different vertex groups. All right, so you can define the weight of each one of the bones to this vertex. Now, you know, for example, this is for the ones that are actually in the area to deform it, and these are all the vertex groups that we have here. These are all the deformed bones in the rig, while these are the ones affecting this particular vertex. We have the leg L, leg R, and the hips, right? Which makes sense because this is the area of those three bones, okay? And these are the other bones, okay? So here, for example, you can see that the hips is being affecting it a lot. That's right. Let's put this to 1, and with this we can just change the value, right? For example, if we change leg R to 1, okay, now if we jump back to the weight paint mode, you can see how this vertex has become red, because now when we select this bone is affecting that one, and that is not cool, because if we just change this, you can see how that that vertex is being pushed by the leg. Well, you cannot see it clearly, but it is. Now just go here and put this to 0. If we click on normalize, what this will do is to just, you know, make all the weights for this vertex to become 1. So now, for example, it, instead of, you know, it cannot be affected 100% by 2 different bones, right? What this will actually do in Blender is to make an average, all right, and it will you know, divide the effect between these 2 bones. Now when we click on normalize, Blender makes sure that there is only a 100% value. So with that we achieve like a 50% in each one of the bones, okay? But I don't want that. I want this one to be 1. So if we keep clicking, you can see how Blender tries to make an average, but what we actually want is to be this 0 and this is 1. Okay, if we want to copy values, you can just copy here, press here, and then you can paste it anywhere else. Okay. So now we have our trousers already weighted. Now we need to go for the boots. So what I'm gonna do is to just select the boots, or actually select one of the boots and shift right click on the armature, press Ctrl P, and set with automatic weights. Okay, so we can go here and see what happens now. You can see how it deforms pretty properly, I must say. It has some little issues, but we can tweak them very easily. You can see how the heel is being deformed in a weird way. We're going to tackle that in a moment. Okay, this situation with the boots is a little trickier because we have 2 different objects and they are like mirrors. So we could probably use the weights from one side to the other. Now, it is kind of tricky to just paint one of the objects and then paste those weights to the other object. And so what I prefer to do in these cases where it is possible, it is to just select the both of them, press Ctrl J to join them, and now the both objects are the same mesh. Okay, as you can see, I can access the edit mode of the two of them at the same time. Now, the reason why I do this is that now when I paint these vertices, I can make Blender to just mirror the weights to the other side, and once I'm done, I can separate them again if it is really needed. Now you have to keep some things in mind, and there is also another way to just paint one side and paste it to the other, but it takes more time, it's trickier, and it may not work in every situation. In the book you can find more information about this. Here I'm just going to show you the easiest way to do it. So select this object, the boots, shift and right click on the armature to select the last one, press Ctrl P, and with automatic weights. So now we have an armature deformation on the boots, and we can just move the bones and see that everything is working. Let's see how this behaves. Okay, so as you can see, the heels are experimenting a kind of weird deformation there. You see it right here. Okay, look at there. That is not supposed to happen. And these ones are also having a very weird deformation on the heels. It shouldn't affect it. Okay, so no problem, we will fix it very quickly. So let's go here and select the boot, and the first thing we need to make sure is that the armature modifier is on top of the subdivision surface. Let's press Ctrl Tab to jump into the weight painting mode. We can see that the X mirror and topology mirror are enabled. Okay, if they aren't, you should enable them. And let's start with this tool. Let's make sure everything is alright around here. Okay, so the tool we are going to use is the subtract option, because I want just to have these vertices that have a little effect. Press set actually to have a better view of the vertices. These ones here have a very little effect from this bone, but they shouldn't have any effect at all. So I need to subtract this weight there, and it's happening the same on this boot. So let's actually try if this works in both boots. So let's just delete these few vertices and see if it make okay, it looks like it is affecting in this side, but I think it is not affecting the whole thing. Okay, it looks like something is a little wrong with the mirror. Maybe just disable topology mirror and see what happens. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, it looks like apparently this is working better. Okay, sometimes you need to keep this in mind, and also the mirror is not always exact. Okay, sometimes your model is probably not completely symmetrical or something, so it may fail, but just keep that in mind. Alright, anyway, in this model it's kind of very simple, right? Looks like it is working fine. It's working just fine. Okay, so we have that sorted. Now this one, okay, we don't want it to affect this area or this area down here, and also this. So you can see how disabling the topology mirror sometimes can help, because topology mirror should be only used actually in a meshes that are really looks like it's working perfectly. Yeah, so it should be only used in meshes that are not completely symmetrical. This one is pretty symmetrical, so the topology mirror is probably confusing the normal mirror. Let's see if this worked. Yeah, it worked. Perfect. And now this one, we should make it that it doesn't affect this area down here. And we need this side should also work in the other side. Let's just keep clicking. Alright. Also disable this a little bit. These little vertices. Okay. Let's go here. And apparently it has worked. Looks the same. So now let's go out of this mode. Control Tab. Press Set to see the solid view. Go to the side view and try to do the same as before and see how the deformation happens now. So as you can see now, the deformation is more, it doesn't affect the heel in a weird way. And if we move the toe, it only affects the toe. This, as you can see, is working just fine. Okay, so we can be happy about this. Okay, we can just pose the character as we want now. Okay, it's pretty fine. What happens now if I select everything, press copy and paste it in the mirrored? It works perfectly, right? So this is what the rig is supposed to do, and when the mirrored pose works, right, it's a sign that the rig is correct. Now here is something weird, and it's that when we, as you can see, when we rotate the leg, there is this kind of hole there in the trousers. We don't want that to happen. So let's go here and let's tweak those vertex weights. Now you can see that even if the model is deformed, we can keep tweaking it until it works, and then reset it or whatever, and it works perfectly. So that is one thing I love about Blender. It's very flexible in this aspect. So let's with the subtract option, just go here. And let's put the strength at something very low so we can keep tweaking the weights very slowly. Press F to keep to change the size. So here we can just click by click smooth it little by little. Okay, and this way you get better deformation. This is also this is already a lot better. Still can use some arrange, but it's definitely a lot better. Yeah, something like that should be cool. Okay, let's go outside of this mode. That's okay. We could keep working on this, but it's already pretty good. And now if I select everything and paste it normally, it works exactly the same in the other side. So as you can see, our trousers are already well skinned, and we should just do this with the whole character. Alright, which is in the book you have more information about this. I just wanted to give you some kind of an introduction so you can in a more visual way you can understand this. Alright, so yeah, this is it. We have our legs skinned. We can just select every single bone, press Alt G, Alt R and Alt S to select everything, and there we go. Now this is funny, right? Okay, see you in the next video. In the next video, you'll see how to create a basic facial rig using shape keys and drivers.